At 18, Daniel faced perhaps his greatest challenge when standing on faith that God will provide him not only the details of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, but also the interpretation. This revelation proved to the most ardent skeptic of biblical truth because it accurately described 4 future global empires over the next 1,000 years. 50 years later, at 68, he received a vision that connected these empires to the final phase of human dominion. Please join us now for this riveting venture through documented history alongside Daniel chapters 2 and 7 in Dreams and Visions of Future Empires. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark. You're watching or listening to the Russak Outlook. Thank you so much for dropping in. Today, we're going to continue a series that we started last week, examining the book of Daniel. However, this presentation is going to take a little bit of a different turn. Last week, we talked about something very unique in Daniel chapters 2 through 7, which is something referred to as a chiasm. So I'm going to put this up on the screen right now, and I showed this last week. And what this basically is, it's a repetition of similar ideas, but in the reverse sequence. And we see this in chapters 2 and 7, and you can see from the screen chapters 3 and 6 and 4 and 5. So unbeknownst to me, as I was preparing this, and normally, if you're going to go through a book, you're going to go chapter by chapter. And I felt very strongly that the Lord had kind of shifted me, and he said, I want you to teach the next 3 videos on this particular chiasm. So in other words, rather than going chapters 2 and 3, because we left off on an intro and 1 last week, we're going to cover 2 and 7 today. Then we'll go 3 and 6, and then 4 and 5 would leave us into a natural sequence. So I just have to... I have to be obedient to what I believe the Lord prompted me to, and at the same time, I have to tell you, I'm very excited that he showed me this, because it really puts, to me anyway, a big kind of shining light bulb over it. So hopefully you will feel the same, particularly with Daniel chapters 2 and 7. So we're going to cover a lot of global empires that followed the Babylonian in Daniel's time. But also there are components that directly relate to that the Lord ascribes to will be in a future world order, or what I sometimes call Roman Empire 2.0. So there's a lot of ground to cover. But before I do, I'd like to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, please go, whatever the platform you're on, YouTube, Rumble, all the podcast platforms, ring the bell. Subscribe to our channel. Please give us some commentary, if you feel, it's warranted. And again, I always say, whether you agree or disagree. And at the same time, I will say that many times people have often shared information that I was not aware of. So again, iron sharpening iron, where we learn from one another. So I'd also ask that please go to the RussakOutlook.com and sign up for our email list. We're going to be doing some different things, and I want to just very briefly tell you about, beginning September 23rd, every Tuesday for 8 weeks, we're going to do a series on Zoom on the book of Revelation. This was something that's been on my heart for a long time to cover, because so often in the church, outside of the church, everybody knows about the book of Revelation. They associate it with Armageddon. I want to break this down into layman's terms, and so we're going to cover it as I do, with charts and information, but also I want it to be interactive so that you have questions or commentary, you'll be free to do so. Because so often, people don't understand, or they avoid the book of Revelation for a number of different reasons, whether it's the apocalyptic symbolism or end of days scenarios, or whatever the reason is, it's probably the most avoided book. And I often say, if you're reading a great book, which there's no better book than the Bible, and you get to the closing chapters and you go, no, I don't want to read the end. That's ludicrous, but yet that is what happens. And then finally, Jesus says, blessed are all those who read and understand it. I'm paraphrasing or grasp it and run with it. So that's what we're doing. So every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Eastern, sign up or email me, russackoutlook@gmail.com. Let me know if you'd like to be a part of it. It's very open. There's no cost. There never is. This is really just designed to engage with one another and get this information out there so that not only you can grasp it, but hopefully you'll take information that you can share within your sphere of influence because it's exciting times. And in this, I will say in closing, and I'll start this presentation, we're going to talk near the end about some very interesting information in the book of Revelation that directly correlates to this particular book, particularly when we get into Daniel chapter 7. So there's a lot to cover. So again, please sign up for our email list at russackoutlook.com and shoot me an email if you'd like to be part of the Zoom presentations every Tuesday beginning September 23rd, 7 o'clock Eastern. It's a 1-hour presentation. We'll leave an extra half hour in there for questions, answers, and anything that comes up, and naturally, any prayer requests that people may have at that time. So that's it. It's enough of the commercials. Let's get going. So dreams and visions of future empires, Daniel chapter 7. So again, I talked about this this chiasm that we will see where chapter 2 interprets Nebuchadnezzar's dream of future empires, and then Daniel receives a vision that he expounds upon it. So we're going to bring the two together, and that's really the purpose. So it begins with chapter 2, and I've titled this little section, Interpreting a King's Dream, the Rise and Fall of Kingdoms. So let's get right into it. Chapter 2, and I'm going to go through everything here because I just think it's that important. Now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. The king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, the Chaldeans, to tell the king of his dreams. So they came, stood before the king. King said to them, I have a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. And this is where it starts. Let me just pause right there. And I think, I did mention this at the bottom of this, so I'll jump ahead. Beginning at this point, Daniel writes the book. From this verse on, he switches from Hebrew to Aramaic till the end of chapter 7. And I believe that's a correlation to what we're seeing in this chiasm, because this really relates a lot to not only the future events, but really the time of the Gentiles. Then the king, so he says, O king, live forever, tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. So the king answered and said to them, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me as its interpretation, you will be cut in pieces, and your houses will be made as ash heap. However, if you tell me the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, great honor. Therefore tell me the dream and the interpretation. They answered and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we'll give the interpretation. So the king's becoming frustrated here. And he says, I know for certain that you would gain time because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make the dream known to me, there is only one decree for you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered that there is not a man on earth who could tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such a thing of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests. There is no other who can tell the king except the gods, who's dwelling not with flesh. So, the scene here obviously is he's got all these servants and astrologers and magicians and people who are dabbling in evil. I'll put it that way. And they say, there's nobody who can except their gods, and because this requires omniscience. This requires, to not only interpret the dream, but telling them the dream. So for this reason, the king was angry, very furious, gave the command to destroy all the wise men in Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men. And they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. So remember, if you go back to where we were last week, Daniel was a part of the king's court. He and his three friends, commonly known, as Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego to most, but we'll cover their real names here shortly. But because they were in that court with all the others, the magicians and the astrologers and the others who were dabbling in the dark arts, sentence goes out that they're going to be killed. So this is chapter 1, he was going to be killed. Chapter 2, he's going to be threatened to be killed. So then God reveals Nebuchadnezzar's dream moving forward. Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answers and said to Antioch, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So this is key here. So Daniel went in and he asked the king to give him time. So the others, you notice, didn't. They just said, we can't do this. That he might tell the king the interpretation. And then Daniel went to his house, made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, otherwise known as Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision, so Daniel blessed the God of heaven. So, a couple things here. He goes to the king and he says, King, I can do this, but I must seek the counsel of God. I must pray. I must go before him. So give me time. So number one, King Nebuchadnezzar says, okay, you have the time. Go and if you can do it, and that's what it takes, that's what he wanted, because he desperately, apparently this dream was so startling to him, he desperately wanted to know it. But what I mentioned this here about dreams. The Bible has over 100 references that God moves on people communicating with them in dreams and visions. So this is not a atypical example. This is common, but there's a lot of ground for this that's already been covered as far as interpreting dreams and giving dreams and visions. And then what I love here is at that point, Daniel's got the answers, or has the answers. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in darkness and the light that dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, have made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand. So what I love here is he gives God all the glory. He humbles himself before the Lord and says, it is because of you that these are answered. And Daniel then goes forth to explain the dream. So Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. So right here, he's also saying, stop the killing, have mercy on these others. Take me before the king, and I will tell him the interpretation. Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king of the interpretation. So again, he's introducing Daniel. Because remember, he came from Israel, from the area known as Judah. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel answered in the presence of the king, the secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. As for you, O king, thoughts came to mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. I'm going to highlight this part here at the bottom, yellow highlight. But as for me, the secret has not been revealed to me because I have more wisdom than anyone living, but for our sakes to make known the interpretation, as that you may know the thoughts of your hearts. So again, Daniel consistently honors God, and I just highlight some scriptures here about the significance and the importance of this. 1 Samuel 1:20, honor God, for those who honor, I will honor. Proverbs 15:33, wisdom's instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor. James 4:10, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord. And then Proverbs 22, humility and the fear of the Lord bring wealth and honor to life. So, so many people are looking for the blessings from God. Be humble, Excuse me, I'm sorry. Be forthright, be open. And if you don't know something, say to that person, I don't know it. But I love so much about Daniel that, I said this last week, this is incredibly one of my favorite books. I just love his character so much. And that, you could see the Lord's outpouring of blessing upon him and coverage and protection and mercy. But, that relationship that these two have is just something that I would certainly aspire to. Moving on, verse 31. You, O king, were watching. So here comes the interpretation. Behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. The image was a head of fine gold, a chest and armor of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, and its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer thrashing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found, and the stone that struck the image was a great mountain filled in the whole earth. This is the dream. Now we will tell you the interpretation of it before the king. So let me just pause for a second because I have a visual display. I've had this for a while. So here's a artist rendition of the statue, the head of gold, the silver, bronze, iron, and then you can see, hopefully you can see, I'll get my fat fingers out of the way, almost like a sand or clay mixed with the iron. And so this is the vision that Nebuchadnezzar sees, this great statue, and then all of a sudden in the vision or the dream, a mountain comes out and comes down and just crushes it at its feet. And I think this is significant in the days to come, and we'll show you, we'll get into this. And then it just crumbles. Everything just crumbles and falls like chaff on the wind. So there's my little guy. You can see him in the corner. I'll put him back up here. So that's hopefully that helped you a little bit. It's not often that I get to use a visual aid like that. So he goes and gives him the interpretation. For the God of heaven has given you kingdom, power, strength, and glory. Whatever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, the birds of heaven, he has given them into your hand, made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. So here he's saying that head of gold is the Babylonian Empire led by King Nebuchadnezzar. But after you shall, I'll go back to video, after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over the earth. And then the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces, shatters everything, like iron that crushes, the kingdom will break in pieces and crush all of the others. It goes on. So whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron, that kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. As the toes of the feet were partly of iron, partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw the mixed iron with the ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seeds of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And then in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it will stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the iron, the clay, the silver, the gold, the God has made known to the king what will come to pass. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is true. And it goes on at the end, and Daniel and his friends were promoted because this was completely accurate. So this is, pretty wild. So now I'm going to get into how we can verify through future empires what they represented. Because remember, it's present at the time. It's Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold, but there's more empires to come down below. And then we will see aspects of all of these empires leading to the bottom and the 10 toes that we'll see in chapter 7 of the future global empire. So I put some, what I find fascinating historical references to these. So the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar would well have understood its reference because his chief deity, Marduk, was known as the god of gold. Additionally, gold had been deposited lavishly throughout the city. So if all historical accounts, I described what Babylon was like at the time, how lavish and just incredibly beautiful it was inside, the gardens, the seventh wonder of the world, all of that, and it had gold everywhere. So that made sense. Silver arms merging into the chest, indicating an empire composed of two nations, two arms. A dual monarchy, if you will. Although this chapter does not present enough information to determine the empires, other chapters, and we'll see this in 7, make it clear that it's the Medo-Persian Empire, which followed the Babylonians. And we see this later on in Daniel, where the Medo-Persians will defeat the Babylonians. The Medes and Persians have been united in 550 BC, and the text of Daniel states that Babylon was given over to the Medes and Persians, 528. Daniel 8:20 identifies a ram with two horns as the kings of Media and Persia. This is a single nation divided by two authorities. One horn is larger than the other, and we'll see this when we get to chapter 8. But at any rate, so there you have the next successive kingdom. It was the Medo-Persian Empire. The midsection of bronze was predicted to rule over the earth. The Greek Empire was begun by Philip of Macedon, extended by his son Alexander the Great, to the farthest reaches of the world. Bronze was a symbol of Greece, partly because its soldiers were dressed in bronze armor. They had more territory than the Babylonians or the Persians, and they had conquered them in 331 BC, the Persians. However, just as Daniel predicted in chapter 11, we'll get to it eventually, not eventually, a few more videos, Alexander's 4 generals, and I'll get to that in chapter 8, divided up his empire after his death. Only 2 of them affected dominance over Israel. I forget how to pronounce this, I apologize. Ptolemies, which were based in Egypt, and the Seleucids in Syria. This fits well with Daniel's vision of the statue's massive section into 2 thighs. The Seleucid ruler Antiochus IV Epiphanes imposed Greek culture on the Jews, and he desecrated the second temple predicted by Daniel in chapter 11. The Greeks extensively used bronze for all their weapons. We'll get to that because that is a foreshadow of what will happen midway through the tribulation. So this example of Antiochus IV, you'll see he desecrated the temple in very similar fashion to what will happen in the tribulation. And then finally, the 2 iron legs with feet composed of mixture of iron and pottery that could crush all of the opponent kingdoms divided up former territories. Iron, which is stronger than gold, silver, or bronze, was the metal developed by the weaponry of the Romans. The Roman Empire was next. And they conquered all of the lands in all of those empires and even more. Rome defeated Greece in 146 BC, occupied the land of Israel in 63 BC, ending Jewish independence. And we all know about that. If you're a follower of Christ, you understand that. Rome, and if you're a historian, I didn't mean just that. Rome destroyed the Jewish temple in AD 70. By 395 AD, had split into two political geographical areas, the two legs, with capitals in Rome and West Constantinople, which is modern-day Istanbul, and it's depicted by those two legs. Another interesting aspect here is, I'm just going to go bottom left, the 6th Iron Legion was known as the Iron Legion because their shields and helmets were made of iron. Rome is divided into two legs. Rome becomes the capital of Western or Empire, or Constantinople, because the capital of the states of the Byzantine Empire. So I guess my point here is all of these symbols and metals that are used were evident in future empires, and they were known particularly for that. So you can't make that up, and again, this is hundreds and up to, I guess that would be 25, almost 2,500 years later. Is that right? No, that's not right. I apologize. That would be a little less than 1,000 years. So these are what the four empires look like. Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greek, Roman, and then the 10-nation confederacy we will see with the 10 toes and mixed with the miry clay. More on that to come. But my point here is at this time, Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar recognized gold. So there was one existing empire, but there was three future empires, the Medo-Persians, the Greek, and the Romans, and God accurately prophesied this. So again, pointing to the sovereignty of the Lord, pointing to the accuracy of the Lord, pointing to the trustworthiness of the Lord. And then wrapping up with this mountain. So again, as the stone, yellow highlight, as the stone struck the statue, it became a great mountain and filled the earth. As you were looking, a stone was cut without human hands. Interesting that he said that. So just some background on this. In the Babylonian religious system, the earth itself was a mountain. The mountain house and the gods came from the sacred mountain of the earth called Mountain of the Lands. Marduk was the chief god and was known as the Great Mountain, which temples dedicated to him and constructed in the shape of mountains. God's purpose of depicting the stone as being cut out of a mountain without human assistance, becoming a great mountain, was to confirm the king and his dream of divine origin. None of Marduk's wise men were able to interpret the dream. This is further emphasized by the stone reducing the statue to dust in the wind. Interestingly, another title for Marduk was Lord of the Wind, based on the belief that the winds were governed by gods. However, here the wind served the stone by removing every vestige of human government so that the kingdom of heaven would be established on earth. So just wrapping this up, the central image of the dream was a great statue, a head of gold. The second image in the dream was the finely crafted stone, blasting the entire thing to bits. Green highlight here, and this is so important. Daniel explains the metallic image in the dream represents four consecutive or successive Gentile world powers that would rule. That a representative of the nation of Israel succeeded in interpreting the dream, and the representatives of Babylon, the most powerful nation of the day, revealed that a destiny of the nations depended on Israel's God and the fulfillment of God's purpose for Israel. So that I often see is just not highlighted enough in my view, that it took a Hebrew slave that was captured by the Babylonians to accurately interpret the dream and present that to King Nebuchadnezzar, saying not only that the God of heaven will eventually rule, because that's what will happen. All of what we see today will just dissipate until the return of Christ, but that it was this Hebrew that did it. Now we're going to shift gears to chapter 7, and we're going to tie this together as the chiasm. But we begin this pivot from historic to prophetic. And what do I mean by that? So Daniel 6:28 says this: Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius, that's the reign of Darius, and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So this was, now he's showing you that he went from the Babylonians and he still served in the courts of the Persians. Daniel 1:21 says, and Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. So Daniel came at 602 BC. The first year of King Cyrus was 550 BC. So he finished his ministry roughly, and then finished his ministry in 536 BC. So for 52 years roughly, that was covered. But we're not going to see that moving forward. The prophetic from 7 through 12 shifts around a bit. So if you see what I show you on the bottom there, in the bottom right, Daniel 7 opens with this. In the first year of Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's, who's Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, he was the king of Babylon. He later dies at the end of chapter 5. Daniel had a dream and visions passed through his mind, and he was lying in his bed, and he wrote the substance of his dream. So, we're seeing Daniel here in the first year of Belshazzar in chapter 7, but remember, he died at the end in chapter 5. So that's what I mean. You don't have that sequence. So let's go into, let's read this. In the first year of Belteshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream. Visions passed through his mind as he was lying in bed. He wrote the substance of his dream. Daniel said, in my vision at night, I looked, and therefore before me were 4 winds of heaven churning up the sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The sea represents the nations. At the time, they would have recognized that as the Great Sea, as the Mediterranean. So here he is 50 years later. He now has this vision that we'll see directly correlates to what was given 50 years earlier to King Nebuchadnezzar. The first was like a lion. It had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off. It lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. So a lion, king of the beasts, king, we know him as king of the jungle. There before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in the mouth between its teeth. It was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. After that, I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back it had 4 wings, and those like a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. So, and you'll see this really shakes up Daniel. And that's not bad enough. Now he really gets a little miffed, because he says this, and after that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying, frightening, very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims. It trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all of the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. Final in verse 8 at the bottom. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns uprooted it. This horn had eyes like that of a human and a mouth that spoke boastfully. I'm going to talk a lot about the boastfulness. So this is Satan. We will see a correlation. I'll draw this in with Revelation shortly, because we see this throughout. All right, so let me continue now. The court was seated and the books were opened. Then I continued, verse 9, because of the boastful words the horn was speaking, I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. So he's looking at future events. He sees this beast, and this is Satan, and I'll show you in the correlation to Revelation. So he's moving through this quickly in this vision. The beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshiped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall never be destroyed. So you see, this happens very quickly. Daniel sees these beasts, these animals coming up out of the sea, which is the nations, and one more terrifying than the other, really, until this great dragon of a beast, but quickly the Son of Man is on the scene, and so within a matter of X amount of verses, you see this entire thing unfold, and quickly, very quickly, Jesus takes control. What I wanted to point out here in Revelation on the bottom is it says, and there was given unto him a mouth. This is Revelation 13, correlates with a lot of what we will see in Daniel. Speaking great things and blasphemies. Verse 6, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and him that dwell in heaven. My point here is, this is Satan on the scene, knowing that, the end is near, and he's cursing God. He's blaspheming his name. And I look at what the Gospel of Mark says, this is Jesus. Whoever blasphemes against Holy Spirit never has forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin. You can say blaspheming God. You're blaspheming Holy Spirit there. He's blaspheming. He's just taking it all out, but he is punished for all of eternity. So now we're going to go to the interpretation of the dream, and then I'm going to tie this into the vision of the statue. It says, follow me on video. I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit. The visions had passed through my mind, disturbing. So he's troubled. And we see this, I should say this, in a number of Daniel's visions and dreams that he has. It physically takes a toll on him. He's worn. He's exasperated by what he's seeing, and he's sick. He's literally sick. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. He said, the four great beasts are four kings or kingdoms that will rise from the earth. Remember, we saw four kingdoms in Daniel 2. But the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom that will possess it forever and ever. Then I wanted to know the meaning of the fourth beast. The fourth beast is what shook him the most. It was different from the others, and it was most terrifying, with iron teeth and bronze claws, the teeth, the beast that brushed and crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head, about the other horn that came up before the 3 of them fell, the horn that looked more imposing than the others and had eyes and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Again, there it is. As I watched this horn waging against the holy people and defeating them, until the Ancient of Days came, pronounced judgment in the favor of the holy people of the Most High, the time came when they possessed the kingdom. He gave me this explanation. The fourth beast is a fourth kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise against the Most High. It will arise different from the earlier ones, and he will subdue the 3 kings. So imagine, here is the 3 kings, the horns, the 10 horns. 3 of them go down, 1 comes up, and that's the Antichrist, which Satan will invade. So he will speak against the Most High, in other words, blaspheme, oppress his holy people, try to change the set of the time and the laws. So he wants to change things. This is his last feeble attempt at changing the inevitable. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. That's the 3.5-year marker. I'm sorry about the coughing. The court will sit, his power will be taken away, completely destroyed forever. The sovereignty, power, and greatness of all kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rules worship and obey him. This is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself. So again, I go to, what I said earlier. It makes him exhausted. It makes him sick. And we've seen this a number of times. So now I'm going to show you how the 4 animals from the statue correlate to the 4 kingdoms we saw in chapter 2. Back to video. And you see I show you the animals versus the statue. So again, going top right, blue section there. the imagery that describes Nebuchadnezzar. We see first, what did we see? The lion. The lion from the thickets of the Jordan, Jeremiah 49 lays this out, because just as lions fled from the thickets, they attacked nearby villages along the Jordan where it overflowed its banks. So the Babylonian general had spread out beyond his immediate reign to attack surrounding countries. His army was renowned for speed, causing Ezekiel to describe him as having wings of an eagle. Notice he has those wings. The sculpted image of a winged lion was an ever-present symbol throughout Babylon. And I will tell you that, well, we'll get to it. I'll share something in a second. But remember the wings on the lion, and what I think will point to something pretty obvious. The bear was considered, the second one now, the bear, the Medo-Persians. The bear was considered a fearful creature. You see it in 1 Samuel, Hosea, Amos. In like manner, the Medo-Persians were considered fierce foe. It lacked the unified strength of its predecessor because a bear moves slower than a lion, though larger than the Babylonian Empire. That would be the same for the Medo-Persians. They too move slower in their war campaigns. The one side being higher refers to the Persian influence to prominence and power. The three ribs, most likely, you can't say this for sure, refer to their greatest conquests, and they're laid out in Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. Third, the leopard. It's one of the fastest animals on earth. The four wings make it twice as fast as the Babylonian lion. 4 wings to the leopard, 2 wings to the lion. The swiftness of conquest was a specific attribute of the Greek Empire. Alexander the Great invaded Asia Minor in 334. Within 4 years, he captured the entire Medo-Persian Empire, including Egypt, Syria, and Israel. Within 6 more years, they moved 11,000 miles of territory from Greece to the west borders of India in the east. The 4 heads represents the fourfold divisions among Alexander's generals. We'll get into a lot of that when we get to chapter 8, because that's very significant to another vision that Daniel had. Finally, in the end here, the beast was a monster that was dreadful, terrifying, and extremely strong. Large iron teeth that devoured the feet, then crushed and trampled down. The iron teeth parallels the legs of the feet of iron in the statue. Daniel focuses on the 10 horns. Remember, he asked the angel, what does this mean with the 10 horns? And the little horn that rose around it to dominate the others. Daniel's interpretation later reveals that 10 horns represent 10 kingdoms. The little horn rises as eyes like that of a man is an idiom for human personality and intelligence, and I can refer to this in Ezekiel and Zechariah. A mouth uttering great boasts and euphemisms for arrogant and boastful things, or as Daniel later reveals, speaking against God. So there's really 3 stages to this. You have the original Roman Empire, then we see this beast come on the scene, and it comes out of the sea and it has the 10 horns, and then you see the 3 horns go down and the 1 come up. We'll see this later in Daniel chapter 8. We'll see this in Revelation. I'll take note of it in a second. So here's those 4 beasts, and you see how they tie to those 4 previous empires, but that they will have attributes of this coming empire. So what I'm referring to as Roman Empire 2.0. What I'm about to show you here, well, I'll just point to video. This is what the conjecture of most people believe these 4 beasts represents. It's not definitive. It's based upon history and symbolism and everything that we know. This is the best guess of what this may be. The lion, British and American alliance. And I do take note of, in the upper left corner, remember the lion is raised on his hind legs. And what do we see? The symbol of England, a lion raised on its hind legs. And then remember, it has the wings of an eagle. The United States, some would refer to it as the young lion mentioned in Ezekiel 38, I believe. And if you think about them, we came, we're an offshoot, if you will, of England. Our historical reference goes back to the British. So we are sometimes called the young lions. And our symbol is an eagle. So the wings of an eagle and the lion on its hind feet, to me, makes perfect sense that it's more than likely some type of alliance between the Brits and the Americans. Could be some other North American, South or Central American nations as well. We don't know. Russia would be the bear, the leopard with the 4 heads and the 4 wings. Most believe it's some type of Central Asia and Middle Eastern alliance, which you could very easily see. You see some of that now with China and Iran, what's developing there. And then the 10-nation confederacy, the 10 horns, coming out of Europe. And it doesn't necessarily mean kings when it says king or kingdoms. So areas of influence, and I'll give you an example of how we look at that today and how we see that historically today. So I believe I showed you this, it's on video here. Again, we can't say this for sure. This is the thought. So moving to Antichrist, and the reason I want to get into this is because inevitably this is all about the end of days and the latter days and what will happen. And the Antichrist has a mission. He wants to rule the world and establish peace under his unifying leadership. Eventually, the 7-year tribulation comes around. There is a peace deal with Israel. That is it. What we see going on around the world today, to me, clearly points to a future peace deal coming with Israel. If you look at the America with Trump, everything you hear out of him is peace, peace, peace. I want peace. And there has to be peace in the world before everything starts to set up, because eventually the world comes against Israel, and that kind of sets the stage. What we see today, the world is coming against Israel. It sets the stage for a peace agreement that he'll eventually break. Part of the plan will make Jerusalem the central place of worship. What do we see today? Everything's about Jerusalem. They're pushing the second Palestinian state. There's a great divide going on right now. You've got France, Ireland, Spain really pushing for a Palestinian state, capital in East Jerusalem. At the same time, you've got what's happening in Gaza. The Israelis saying this is not going to happen. Now they're moving into areas of what the world considers the West Bank, what the Bible calls Judea and Samaria, and they're starting to look at establishing new settlements there under Jewish control. So it's all leading up to what the Bible lays out. His ambition is to be worshipped, and that is what the ambition of the Antichrist will be. Satan, empowers him. Satan wants worship. He wants to be like the Most High. So this is everything that we see. So I'm looking at 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 and 4. The Apostle Paul writes this: "Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worship. So he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God." You see that in the green lower left. This is all of what Satan is looking for, and eventually there will be the condemnation. He will be taken captive, cast into the lake of fire, which goes back to that symbolism of the mountain coming down and crushing those empires. So as I'm wrapping this up, I want to point to things in Revelation that go back to what we just covered in Daniel 2 and 7. The word Antichrist does not appear in Revelation, but guess what? He's noted as the beast 28 times in the book of Revelation. What was the central figure in Daniel's vision was the beast, the one that shook him so much. John is the only New Testament writer to use Antichrist. He uses it in 1 John and 2 and 2 times in 2 John. He's also referred to the man of lawlessness, son of perdition, foolish shepherd, king who exalts himself. 1 John 2:18. I think this is important here. "Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard, that Antichrist shall come. Even now there are many antichrists, whereby we know that that it is the last time. So in other words, there's what many refer to as the spirit of Antichrist, what, for lack of a better term, little Antichrist, but not the Antichrist that will be on the scene in the last days. Examples would be Nero. He had that spirit of Antichrist. He killed tens of thousands of Christians. He dipped them alive in tartar and then lit them as human torches. I mean, there are things where he invited people to watch in his gardens Christians that he captured. He skinned them, or he would feed wild dogs to them as they were hanging there. I mean, this is brutal, ugly stuff. And you know, it's. I'm going to say it. Some of the stuff that we saw on October 7th, you know, that is a spirit of Antichrist, where you're capturing and mutilating women and children and burning babies alive in ovens. And you have the examples of Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. Stalin killed 30 million Russians. Idi Amin, the butcher of Uganda. And then I kind of point over here. I'll go back, moving ahead to Daniel 11. And verse 36, and the king shall do according to his will. He shall exalt himself, magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous, blasphemous things against the God of gods. Verse 37, neither shall he regard the God of Hebrew, of Elohim, of his fathers. So this is interesting, a side note, and I think this could very well be the case. This is talking about the future Antichrist. Neither shall he regard the God, which could be the Hebrew God, of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all. When it says he shall not regard the God of his fathers, could he be Jewish? So I say that's a distinct possibility that, you know, he could. But I guess, you know, I'm trying to emphasize, draw some things here from Revelation to what we saw in chapter 7 of Daniel. And again, the beast. So I'm going to show you Daniel again here. A beast shall rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns are 10 crowns, and upon his name blasphemy. Revelation 2:12-3. There appeared another wonder in heaven, beheld a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. The 10 horns were without are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom at all, but receive power as kings one hour with the beast. That's at the end. They will try to overthrow him. But again, going back to the 10 horns, the one horn that pops up takes down 3 of them. You see this in Revelation, and you see it in Daniel. So what are the 7? So it would be believed that your first would have been the Egyptian Empire, the Assyrian Empire, the 4 that we talked about, Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greek, Roman, and then eventually at the period of the Antichrist, Roman 2.0, however you want to call it. But that's all laid out. Now, again, I'm just going to show you a little bit more of Revelation and Beast, and we're going to wrap this up. So the Antichrist, or the Beast, is Satan, dragon. He has 2 prominent figures. The Beast, which is a political global leader, a dictator of the one world government, and then the false prophet, who will be a religious leader. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. What did Daniel see? He saw a beast out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his 10 horns crowns, and upon the heads, the name blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. What do we see in Daniel 7? The leopard. His feet were as feet as the wide of a bear. His mouth is the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him power and his seat and great authority. So all 4 animals that we saw in chapter 7 that we can relate to from King Nebuchadnezzar's dream in chapter 2, we also see again in John's account of the book of Revelation here. So again, this is why I'm saying it's kind of a bookends, tying it all together. And I saw one of his heads. Oh, you know, that's something else. I don't have time to get into. It's in the book of Revelation. All right, I'll leave that. Where else? Where else? I wanted to, and verse 5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. Power was given to him to continue 42 months, the second half of tribulation. He opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. So, this is all consistent with what we see in Daniel. We see it in Revelation. And I just, because of the empires, and a lot of people have questioned what this is, it says in Revelation 17, as we're nearing the end, says this: there are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. The other has not yet come, but when he does come, it will remain for a little while. And what this really means, and I break this down here, it says the 5 have fallen, that's past tense. The Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, and the Greeks, past tense. The present at the time of John would have been the Roman Empire. They would have still been that empire. So that is the one that is. Then it says the other is not yet come, which is the future, Roman 2.0. And when he comes, it will be a short space. Why? Because he'll arrive on the scene at the beginning and strike the treaty in the beginning of the tribulation, 7 years. But halfway through is when he'll try to rise to prominence by taking everything over, and it will be a short time. So as I wrap this up, just 2 things to consider here. When we talk about these nations coming together and kings and kingdoms and everything, I personally believe you see an abundance of this being put together now in the earth. And I'm going to give you some examples on video here. The European Union, Asia's Union, the United Arab Federation, the North, Central, and South America, the African Union, BRICS. These are all these conglomerations of nations, and we see it coming together. So to see that in the latter days, as they start to form these kings and kingdoms, and the two legs of iron, I will say I personally believe one leg will be from the east, one leg will be from the west, and those 10 toes will represent the 10 kingdoms. And when it says they will be of miry clay, because you will have the mixture, you'll have the strength of iron. But I personally think is a good case can be made that it will be technology interfacing with humanity that will give it its fragility, if you will. I think AI potentially plays a piece in this. So as I wrap this up, I'm going to go back to the word chiasm and what we see between 2 and 7. So let's break this down for the last minute or two here. From the perspective, Daniel chapter 2 represents the kingdoms from a human perspective, the imposing statue, while chapter 7 presents it from a divine perspective, the fearsome beasts. Chapter 7 provides greater detail, particularly concerning the little horn, the power that persecutes the saints and the nature, because we didn't really see that mentioned in the dream with Nebuchadnezzar. Chapter 7 expands on the themes introduced in chapter 2. We drew how that came in, those 4 beasts, how they can be tied to those 4 empires. The layers of symbolic meaning and revealing how human kingdoms are characterized by spiritual and political corruption. The kingdoms, both chapters describe the same historical progression of the 4 main empires, but with different visual metaphors. And the outcome is what we all know. Both visions conclude with the destruction of the human empires and the establishment of God's eternal kingdom, with the rock in chapter 2 corresponding to the Son of Man and the saints in chapter 7. So that's what I mean by that chiasm. So it's really man's perspective of things in chapter 2 and God's perspective of things. They both point to the end of days. They both point to what is coming. But as you draw closer and closer, you see those obvious comparisons. And I think it's fascinating how God just kind of weaves that together. And, I believe that he wants you to search his word. He wants you to search these things out because he takes delight in that. He takes delight in seeking these things so that, to me, it just further verifies not only the awesomeness, but the integrity of God's word, that his truth is yea and nay, is what do they say? Yea and nay, and that's it. It's established. It's just, and that's just me. I just find his word so incredibly fascinating and loving. He just he wants to make himself known to you. I'll leave it at that. So I just thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any further questions or comments on this, please email Mark Russak at gmail or russackoutlook@gmail.com. I'm sorry. Go to our website, russackoutlook.com. I'll get it. If you have any prayer requests, anything that I can do, point you to churches or wherever area you're from, I'll do my best if you're new to the Lord. But I just thank you for your time. I hope that you got some things out of this. I certainly love preparing this information. God bless you, and I hope to see you again on the next round where we'll continue with the chiasm. We'll continue with melding chapters 3 and 6. Just remember, you've been listening to the Russak Outlook, and as always, just my opinion.